Welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to explain a movie called Epic. Get comfortable. The film begins with Bomba getting alerts from his sensor. Bomba sees a creature and catches it. It's a small bird with a saddle. Meanwhile, in the forest, Nod, a leaf man, is chased by some bogans. He is seen by the commander of the leaf men, Ronan, who offers him help. Nod rejects it, but Ronan rescues him and questions why he rides alone. Ronan is frustrated, so he tells Nod to get a bird and return to Moonhaven, or he's out of the army, and he leaves. MK is in a taxi to see her father, Bomba. She is meeting him for the first time in a long while and hopes it goes well. MK alights at the building, and the driver tells her to call him whenever she needs to leave. MK knocks a few times without a response and decides to walk in. Soon, she sees her dad, who is busy trying to figure out the form of a creature. She greets him, and he hugs her, trying to start a conversation about her late mother. MK dismisses the topic and is shown to her room. He wants to talk with her when the sensor alarm goes off, so he tells her to rest and leaves. In the forest, Bomba's sensor picks up the movement of some birds. Meanwhile, Moonhaven creatures are excited about a ceremony. Soon, Ronan meets the queen, Tara, and tells her they shouldn't do a public ceremony to pick an heir. Rather, he and his men should bring a pod to her to transfer her power. However, Queen Tara refuses and tells him they can't choose a pod in her absence. Ronan tries to convince her about the aggression of the bogans, but she insists otherwise. Deep in the forest, the Bogan prince delivers news to his father, Mandrick, about the location of Queen Tara's ceremony. The Bogan king doesn't want a balance between rot and green forest. He wants the entire forest to rot and is furious because the queen regrows the green forest, no matter how much he tries to destroy them. The Bogan king agrees with his son to kill the queen before she chooses an heir so that they can take over the entire forest forever, and she won't be alive to restore life to the forest. Nod returns to Moonhaven with a bird, and Ronan tells him to get a real bird and join the rest of the group. Nod quits because he can't be pushed around like a kid. Meanwhile, MK sees her father on a tree struggling with a camera. He says he uses it to monitor tiny men in the woods and asks MK what her mother told her about him. MK says her mother said his delusion about tiny men ruined his marriage and career. Bomba tries to show MK his research concerning tiny men. He says they talk, move, and live faster than humans, just like insects. Momentarily, the sensor alarms go off, and despite MK trying to get him to stop talking about tiny men, he leaves because he doesn't want to miss the chance of getting them. Minutes later, MK packs her things and leaves her dad a note. She tries to call the taxi driver, but there is no network connection. Meanwhile, her dog, Ozzy, barks and runs quickly into the bush with MK chasing him. In the ceremony, Queen Tara is to transfer her powers to a pod for life to continue in the forest. She speaks to some snails, Mob and Grub, to choose a pod. They offer her the biggest pod, but she picks the smallest. As the ceremony continues, Ronan notices a rotting leaf and shoots at a tree. Soon, the Bogan army interrupted the ceremony and began covering the forest with rot. Queen Tara is running to safety as birds cover her. She sees a girl being attacked and uses her power to save her. Meanwhile, Ronan and other leaf men fight the Bogans. Ronan is flying a bird and gets Queen Tara on it. Mandrick and his son shoot arrows. Ronan sends the arrows back, but the queen is hit. The queen falls to the ground, where MK calls out to Ozzy. She transfers her power to the pod, and MK catches it. Soon, MK turns to a tiny woman, and Tara tells MK to take the pod to Nimgaloo. Moments later, Ronan and the leaf men arrive, but Tara dies in Ronan's arms and fades into the sky. The soldiers pay their last respect as the queen's grave turns black. MK tells Ronan the queen's last words, and he instructs the soldiers to get everyone safe while he delivers the pod to Nimgaloo. MK realizes she has become small and tells Ronan that she won't release the pod until he makes her big again. He struggles to get it from her, but Mub and Grub stop him and ride with him to Nimgaloo. In another part of the forest, Nod is racing with other creatures who want him to lose. They set a trap, but he wins eventually. After the race, Mr. Buffo punishes him and wants him to be killed by a snake for not losing, as he asked him to when Ronan shows up. Ronan breaks the news to Nod about the Queen's death and needs a rider, and Nod agrees to come along. Meanwhile, MK's dad returns home and wants to talk, but he doesn't find her at home, only the letter. Nod and MK ride together with Ronan, Mub, and Grub on another bird, and they see the damage caused in the forest. They want to turn around and pass another route, but Nod is quick to move and alerts the Bogan army. The Bogans invade the forest, and Mandrick gets information from Mr. Buffo about the pod. They arrive at Nim Gallowoo's, and everyone is gathered to know what happened to the Queen. Nim sings about a scroll that holds the history of the forest. He reads the content but stops when it gets to the Queen's death. Nim leaves the stage to confirm the news when Ronan and his accomplice greet him. MK delivers the Queen's words, and Nim takes them to a place where they can find out what to do with the pod. Nim picks a scroll about the pod and reads out the instructions. The pod is supposed to bloom under the full moon at night, so they leave to wait for nighttime. Quickly, MK asks Nim if it is possible to check the scrolls for a way she can go back home. Nim gives her a scroll and gets a message from the Queen. She tells MK that the pod needs her, and she was brought into the forest for a reason but can leave after the pod blooms. Ronan tells Nod to protect the pod while he sends word to the other Leaf men about their return to Moonhaven with the pod. Nim announces that the Queen is gone, but a new queen will arise at night when the pod blooms. Nod believes the pod is safe in Nim's tree and takes MK to ride on a deer. He tells her he learned to ride a deer from his father. Meanwhile, Mandrick goes to Nim's tree and kidnaps Mub and Grub, who have the pod. Ronan challenges Nod and MK for losing the pod and wants to go to Rathwood to retrieve the pod. The full moon is almost out, and Nod suggests they disguise themselves as Bogans, so MK leads them to Bomba's house to get Boggan's armor. However, in Rathwood, Mandrick says the pod will bloom in darkness, and he'll destroy the forest. They are in Bomba's house when Bomba walks in, and Nod and Ronan recognize him as the man obsessed with finding them, and Ronan says they intentionally distract him from finding them. Ronan and Nod imitate and mock Bomba's slow actions because the human world is slower than theirs. MK stops them by telling them Bomba is her dad. Shortly after, MK goes to her dad and sees him brooding over a family photograph and the note, soliloquizing how his belief ruined his family. She tries to call him, but he doesn't hear her. Only Ozzy hears chirping sounds. Soon, Ozzy begins to chase her because he thinks she's an insect. MK runs to Ronan and Nod to save her. They all begin to run together. Bomba is distracted by Ozzy's continuous bark, so he fetches his goggles and sees the tiny men. He wants to catch them in a vacuum. Meanwhile, when Ronan fires an arrow at Ozzy, MK pushes it, and the arrow hits her dad in his butt cheek instead. Roni proceeds to get a rope to help them up, but Bomba quickly uses the vacuum to trap MK in a jar. He sees MK and is confused but falls unconscious due to the arrow that hit him earlier, causing the jar to break and releasing MK. MK, Ronan, and Nod arrive at Rathwood. Nod and MK are to get the pod, Mub, and Grub, while Ronan is to distract the Bogans. Nod and MK get the pod and run as Mandrick and Ronan fight. Mandrick thinks Ronan came with 1,000 Leaf men but is disappointed to find out otherwise, so he sends the Bogan army after Ronan and the pod. Ronan is overpowered by Bogans and tells the others to leave for Moonhaven. Nod, MK, Mob, and Grob return to Moonhaven, and Nim places it under the full moon. The pod is about bloom when Mandrick's bats cover the moonlight. The Leaf men attack the Bogans while MK gets her dad to stop the bats. MK stands in front of all Bomba's cameras to call out to him, but without looking, he silences the sensors and turns off all cameras. Bomba is scattering his things when he remembers he saw MK earlier. He goes into the forest, and they meet, and she tells him to follow her. Eventually, MK gets to Moonhaven with her dad and plays the bat frequencies on his phone to lead the bats away from the moonlight. Shortly after, the pod fully blooms, the power restores life in the forest, and Mandrake is destroyed. Terra Spirit crowns the young girl she saved earlier as the new queen. Afterward, the new queen makes MK big, and she meets her father and hugs him tightly. Days later, MK and Bomba sketch the Leaf Men. When the sensor picks up movement by the camera, it's Nod and Mub who come to greet MK. She invites her dad to say hi to them, and they rush into the forest. That was all from the video. Subscribe to this channel to watch more content like this.